I have lived most of my life in different Latin American countries. I was born in Mexico, I moved to the US, I lived a couple of years in Colombia, then Chile, and the odd exception was Singapore. But I've always battled with the fact that I've never really looked much like the people around me. Even though I was born in Mexico and my parents are Colombian and so are my grandparents and great-grandparents, I don't feel like I have access to the label Latina because of my features. Like many conflicted teenagers, I constantly battle with the idea of who I am, what labels describe me, and where I fit in this ever-evolving world. One of my first experiences with this existential confusion was during the 9th grade version of the PSAT. I remember walking into the room, sitting down, jittery, nervous, excited because I was convinced that I was taking a huge step in my academic experience. In reality, the test really meant nothing to my next school, but that's another story. I remember sitting down, the proctor walked in with a thick book of the script that precedes most standardized tests, and we started bubbling in the information that comes before them. And we arrived to the personal information section, and there was a little box in which you'd have to tick off your race or ethnicity. There were a couple of options. So there was white, black, Native American, Latino, Latina, and other. Suddenly, I'm completely stumped. I don't really know which box to tick. I wonder if I have to pick based on the color of my skin. If that's the case, then I'd have to choose white. But I don't really feel white. Am I white? I don't know. But in the end, I realized that I was wasting too much mental energy on a very small, very insignificant part of the experience. So I settle on the other box and continue to take the test. I settle on the other box mainly because I know that the answer checking machine isn't really interested in the nuances of my identity or lack of it. But as I finish the test, I get back and I keep on thinking about this question. I worry that I'm overcomplicating it, that there are many more important issues that you'd rather focus on. But the thought was there. It was like a bite that was small, it was itchy, it was uncomfortable, but not important enough to actually vent about it or take action. Calling myself a Latina has always felt disrespectful, even like a lie, especially to the people that have suffered discrimination because of their skin color and heritage. But at the same time, I really do yearn for that label. I really yearn for that sense of community, that sense of belonging. But again, I've never felt Latina enough. I remember moving back to Colombia after a couple of years living in the United States, and all traces of my Spanish-speaking abilities were completely erased. I was called Mona and Gringa, not Mona as in monkey or mico, but Mona as in a girl with very light hair, light eyes, and light skin. I was desperate to fit in, and I constantly practiced rolling my R's and even tried worsening my English just so that I could fit into that small niche. Time passed, and I still grappled with this problem, and eventually I moved to Singapore. And as all of us, my peers, started developing into hints of adulthood, I realized that I lacked the curves that I normally associated with Caribbean bodies. And then I looked up to my mom, her olive black skin, straight black hair, piercing black eyes, and my brother is her spitting image. It is important, however, to distinguish between one's need to identify with one's identity and the corresponding responsibilities. Because the more I interact with different cultures, the more I realize that I get really excited and tend to speak too loud. I move my hands a little too much and sometimes add a bit of extra passion, if not to say drama, to seemingly mundane things. I get really surprised when people point out my accent in Spanish because I've convinced myself I don't have one. And I've realized that although I don't fit in with the physical stereotypes, my vocabulary, my idioms, my movements, they really all do align with the Caribbean passion I've always admired in my family. Nevertheless, I won't deny that I'm white as well, and I carry responsibilities because of it. I know that my mom and my brother have never had to deal with and never will deal with doubts about their ethnicity. They have skin immune to the red blotches of over-tanning and the intrinsic belonging to a solitary group of people that has come together due to years of discrimination. But at the end of the day, these questions ebbed and flowed from my mind, more prominent in moments of teenage angst and less so when I was drowned in homework. Recently, however, the idea has resurged. I moved back to Chile at the beginning of last semester after spending 1 year in Colombia, and I was convinced I would never feel a culture shock again. After such a nomadic life, I really thought I was immune to them. I was quickly proven wrong, though, when sentences here were riddled with words like pololo, regalonear, and carrete, when they actually meant novio, consentir, and rumba. I was a veteran of change, faced with what seemed like a fundamentally new language. And then I realized, I've been questioning my identity as a Latina, but have seldom questioned what being Latinx actually means. At first, it seems obvious and straightforward. Spanish is what unites Latin America. The language is what unites us. But when people call grass, pasto, grama, manga, or cake, pudín, torta, pastel, or popcorn, crispeta, palomita, or cabrita, it's evident that language is not what unites us or defines us as Latin Americans. Even Colombians of different regions can't really understand what the other is saying, which is a frequent occurrence in my households, as my paisa dad smiles and nods while my costeña mom speaks at 1,000 words per second. The intricacies of my identity and our identity, not only as Latinos but as third culture kids, is enough to make anyone's head spin. But beyond appearances and cultural values, knowing and relating to our identity impacts our relationship with our surrounding community and how we're perceived. My family and I were living in Asia one day, when my brother comes home, excitedly telling us about his day. Yo estaba corriendo hacia el arco y hice una cabecita directa al arco y metí un golazo. Fue el mejor gol del partido. He's excited, he's happy, and I'm frankly focusing on my geometry homework. I zone out and just let my mom and my brother continue their banter. But suddenly, I turn around and my brother's saying that a girl told him to shut up, brown boy. He said that all his friends had laughed, so that it was okay. But I was frankly stupefied. I turned and looked at him and asked him, "What do you mean it's okay?" I'd always known that those people existed, those that practiced mindless racism and blurted out degrading comments. But I saw that on the news. You saw that on your Twitter feed, on news stories, and I didn't know how to react. I turned around trying to comfort him, trying to make him feel confident, proud of his skin color, because it was truly an artistic testament to his culture. But in reality, I was trying to come to terms with the situation myself. My mom turns around and responds, something that really stuck out to me. She said that as long as he was aware and he really understood the beauty of his features, generations of history embedded within them, he will always have the strength to withstand those remarks. After this, an intrinsic reflection followed. I looked down at my hands, the shadows of veins webbing around my hands through my arms, and I accepted that I do have white privilege. I accepted that despite consistently reprimanding and criticizing those people that carry and exploit their privilege, I also carry the responsibility of recognizing the advantages that come alongside my features. I will never be in my brother's shoes despite being from Latin America. I will never have to think twice about the lack of opportunities based on race, and I will never have to face the burden of racism. But I also know that my skin color and my features don't make me any less Latina. Being Latinx isn't only about physical appearances. It's about the shared appreciation of danceable music, good food, close family, beautiful literature, expressive language, loud voices, animated conversations, and una que otra chancletada. Overall, it is the communal love of life and the respect of our ancestry that truly makes us Latinos. So, I'm a white Latina. I'm the image of my father with his freckled skin, and we both have cheeks that turn rosy pink when the timing is just right. But if you dig deeper, you'll find love and passion and love for our heritage. This may not be apparent at first sight, but as our physical appearances and cultures marry, They form our identity as essence, especially as kids who have traveled the world and lived through so many different cultures. In this way, third culture kids, with their myriad of stories and experiences, battle with their designated spot in the world. But it is the connections we make, the adventures we live, the people we love, and the places that tattoo a little bit of themselves in our hearts every time we leave that truly give us a sense of belonging in our very own version of the global community. I've realized that my fear of using Latina as a label to describe myself comes from a fear of disrespecting or underappreciating a culture. Most, if not all of the third culture kids listening to this, know that the constant state of change we live in is made easier by the appreciation of other cultures, and the deep knowledge that there are things we may not understand as outsiders, but have to appreciate nonetheless. These cultures make our identities, but it's also really important to know our roots, as far away and abstract as they may seem. Despite moving around the world, I know one thing for sure. I was raised by the warmth of a Caribbean mother and the affection of an Andean father. I'm the amalgamation of the oceans and the mountains, but I do have to recognize the privileged situation I'm in. I have the leeway of calling myself a Latina because I feel the love for life, the gozadera, because I love una buena bandeja paisa and use the words ajá and vaina way too much. But I also have a phenotype that will allow me free passes, something that my mother and my brother do not have. However, I use and will continue to use my privilege to fight against discrimination. But I also know that the flavorful Latin American blood flows within me, and that is one privilege I'm thankful to have.